Ronald thought he had pulled off the perfect crime. He was sitting in first class, champagne in hand, his 24-year-old mistress giggling beside him, while his wife, Sarah, was supposedly waiting at home for his emergency business trip to end. He didn't know that while he was packing his bags, Sarah wasn't crying. She was packing up his entire life. In his briefcase sat an envelope he hadn't opened yet, one that contained not a Christmas card, but divorce papers and a signed contract selling their dream home out from under him. But the real twist wasn't the papers, it was who was waiting for him when the plane finally landed. This is the story of how a Christmas in the Maldives turned into a nightmare in federal custody. The air inside the first-class lounge at JFK Terminal 4 smelled of expensive cologne, roasted coffee, and the specific, sterile quiet that money buys. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the December sleet was hammering against the glass, turning the tarmac into a gray, miserable blur. But inside, it was warm, and for Ronald Sterling, life had never felt more electric. Ronald adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke suit, glancing at his reflection in the darkened window. At 45, he still had it. The gray at his temples was distinguished, not aging. The waistline was held in check by frantic gym sessions and a keto diet he hated but adhered to religiously. "Ronald, baby, look at this." A voice purred from the plush leather armchair next to him. Chloe held up her phone, displaying a photo of a bungalow on stilts over turquoise water. "The concierge at the resort just emailed. They upgraded us to the Sunset Villa. Can you believe it?" Ronald smiled, though his eyes darted reflexively to the lounge entrance. It was a nervous tick he couldn't quite shake, even though the odds of running into anyone he knew were astronomical. "That's great, Chloe. You deserve the best view." Chloe Miller was 24, an event planner he'd met at a tech conference in Austin 6 months ago. She was vibrant, demanding, and dangerously exciting. She was everything his life back in Connecticut wasn't. "I still can't believe you made this happen," Chloe whispered, leaning in to squeeze his bicep. "Christmas in the Maldives. You're actually here." I thought she might guilt you into staying." Ronald took a sip of his scotch, the liquid burning pleasantly in his chest. "Sarah understands the industry, Chloe. When I told her the Tokyo merger was in crisis mode, and I had to fly out on Christmas Eve to salvage the deal, she didn't argue. She just hid." He remembered that sigh. It was the morning prior. Sarah had been standing in the kitchen of their sprawling colonial in Greenwich, holding a mug of tea. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't thrown a plate. She had just looked at him with eyes that seemed oddly flat, almost opaque, and sighed. "Go then," she had said. "If the deal is that important, Ronald, you have to go. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." It had been almost too easy. For a fleeting second, guilt had pricked at him, leaving his wife of 15 years alone on Christmas, but he justified it quickly. Their marriage had been on autopilot for years. No fights, just a cold, courteous roommate situation. He deserved this. He earned the millions that paid for the house, the cars, the lifestyle. He deserved to feel alive again. "She's probably wrapping presents for her nieces right now," Ronald said dismissively, checking his Rolex. "She's a creature of habit, very predictable." "Well, her loss is my gain," Chloe said, grabbing her carry-on as the announcement for their flight to Dubai, the connection to Malé, chimed overhead. They made their way to the gate. Ronald felt a surge of adrenaline as he handed his boarding pass to the attendant. This was the point of no return. Once he stepped onto that Emirates A380, he was free. No more sneaking around for the next 10 days. Just sun, ocean, and Chloe. He paused at the jet bridge entrance, pulling out his phone one last time to check for messages. There was one text from Sarah, sent 30 minutes ago. "Sarah, I put a document in your briefcase. Top pocket, just some tax forms for the Tokyo office I found on your desk. Didn't want you to forget them. Safe flight." Ronald frowned. Tax forms? He didn't remember leaving any tax forms on his desk. He was usually meticulous about his workspace. "Coming, Ronald?" Chloe called out, already posing for a selfie in the tunnel. "Yeah," he muttered, thumbing a quick reply. "Thanks. Boarding now. Love you." He stared at the words, "love you." It was a reflex, a muscle memory of a marriage that had died long ago. He hit send, switched his phone to airplane mode, and walked down the jet bridge. He felt like a man who had just pulled off the greatest heist of the century. He didn't notice the man in the gray suit standing near the gate counter, watching him board. The man held a phone to his ear. "He's on the plane, Mrs. Sterling," the man said quietly. "Flight 202. Doors are closing in 5 minutes." On the other end of the line, miles away in a quiet house that was slowly being emptied of furniture, Sarah Sterling's voice was ice cold. "Good. Let me know when it's wheels up, Mr. Henderson. Then we execute phase 2. The first-class cabin on the A380 was a sanctuary of gold accents and private suites. Ronald settled into seat 1A, with Chloe directly behind him in 2A. The partition was down, allowing them to chat, but for the moment, Ronald needed a second to breathe. The stewardess, a woman with immaculate makeup and a practiced smile, offered him a hot towel. "Mr. Sterling, welcome aboard. Can I get you a pre-departure beverage? Dom Perignon?" "Please," Ronald said, reclining the seat. He felt the heavy vibration of the cargo doors closing beneath them. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing a flight time of 12 hours and 30 minutes to Dubai. 12 hours of luxury. Ronald reached for his leather briefcase, sliding it out from the storage compartment. He remembered Sarah's text. Tax forms. It was odd. Sarah never touched his work papers. She was a pediatric surgeon, brilliant, precise, and entirely uninterested in his corporate finance world. He unzipped the top pocket. Sure enough, there was a thick, manila envelope. It wasn't sealed. He pulled it out. There was no label on it. "Here's your champagne, sir," the stewardess said, placing the flute on his console. "Thanks," Ronald murmured, distracted. He opened the envelope. Inside, there was a stack of legal-sized documents. He expected to see IRS forms or perhaps some acquisition contracts he'd misplaced. The first page wasn't a tax form. At the top, in bold capitalized letters, it read, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Ronald blinked. The words didn't register at first. It felt like reading a foreign language. He scanned down. Petitioner: Sarah Elizabeth Sterling. Respondent: Ronald James Sterling. His heart skipped a beat, then hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He flipped the page, his hands trembling slightly. It was a full divorce filing, citing irreconcilable differences, citing adultery. He froze. Adultery? How? He had been so careful. He used a burner phone for Chloe. He paid for hotels in cash or through a shell company account. He had never left a digital trail. He flipped furiously through the pages. Attached to the petition were exhibits. Exhibit A, a credit card statement from a consulting firm Ronald had set up, highlighting charges for a diamond bracelet, the one currently on Chloe's wrist. Exhibit B, a transcript of text messages. "Can't wait to be inside you. She's so boring, Chloe. You're the only one who gets me." Ronald felt the blood drain from his face. The nausea hit him instantly, sour and violent. She knew. She had known for months. "Babe?" Chloe's voice floated over the partition. "You okay? You haven't touched your champagne." Ronald quickly shoved the papers back into the envelope, his breathing shallow. I'm fine. Just work stuff. A complication with the Tokyo deal. Don't work too hard," she teased. "We're on vacation mode." Vacation mode. He stared at the envelope. This was bad, but he could fix it. He was a negotiator. He would call her as soon as they landed. He would deny it, claim the texts were fabricated, claim the account was hacked. It was a bluff. He reached into the envelope again, hoping that was it. But his fingers brushed against another document clipped to the back. A thicker document. Real estate purchase and sale agreement. He frowned. What was this? He read the first paragraph. Property address, 42. Oakwood Lane, Greenwich, CT. His house, his sanctuary. Seller, Sarah E. Sterling, as trustee of the Sterling Family Trust. Buyer, redacted, LLC. He flipped to the signature page. Sarah's signature was there, dated yesterday, and next to it, his signature? No, that wasn't possible. He hadn't signed anything. He looked closer. It was his signature, perfectly replicated. Or, was it? He remembered signing a stack of trust update documents Sarah had given him 3 weeks ago. She had caught him in a rush, heading out the door. Just standard updates for the estate planning, Ronald. Sign here, here, and here. He had signed a power of attorney, A specific power of attorney granting her the right to liquidate real estate assets in the event of his incapacity or absence from the country for more than 48 hours without prior written notice. He read the clause highlighted in yellow marker on page 4. In the event the grantor is absent from the jurisdiction, trustee has full authority to liquidate. He felt faint. She had sold the house that was his pride and joy, the house he had sunk $3 million of renovations into. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently 4th in line for takeoff, the pilot announced. Flight attendants, prepare for departure. The plane lurched forward. Ronald scrambled to find his phone. He had to call her. He had to stop this. He switched off airplane mode, ignoring the glare of the flight attendant walking down the aisle. No service. They were already moving too fast, the signal blocked by the fuselage and the interference of the airport infrastructure. He watched the bars on his phone flicker and die as the engines roared to full power. The thrust pushed him back into his seat, pinning him there. He was trapped in a metal tube, hurtling into the sky at 180 miles per hour, while his life on the ground was being dismantled, brick by brick. But the envelope wasn't empty yet. There was a sticky note attached to the very back page. It was in Sarah's handwriting. "Enjoy the Maldives, Ronald. I canceled your return ticket. And by the way, the credit cards you're traveling with, I reported them stolen this morning. They should be declining right about now." As if on cue, Chloe's voice piped up from behind him, sounding confused and slightly annoyed. "Ronald? The flight attendant just tried to run your Amex for the upgrade fee on my spa package. She says it's coming up as fraudulent, do not honor. Do you have another card?" The plane lifted off the ground, the wheels retracting with a heavy thud that sounded like a prison door slamming shut. Ronald looked out the window as New York City shrank beneath them. He wasn't flying toward paradise. He was flying into a freefall. The cabin of the A380 had settled into a hush, the lights dimmed to a soothing, ambient violet designed to mimic a twilight sky. For everyone else in first class, this was the beginning of a restful sleep. For Ronald, it was a high-altitude prison cell, upholstered in Italian leather. He sat motionless, the flute of Dom Perignon going flat on the console beside him. The envelope lay open on his lap, a paper wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. "Sir?" The flight attendant, her name tag read Vanessa, was standing over him again. Her smile was still polite, but the warmth had evaporated, replaced by the clipped efficiency of someone dealing with a problem passenger. "Regarding the transaction for Miss Miller's spa package, we still need an alternative form of payment. The system is flagging the Amex as stolen." Ronald felt a bead of sweat roll down his spine, cold and sharp. He forced a laugh, but it sounded brittle, like stepping on dry leaves. "It's a banking error, Vanessa. My wife, she's moving some assets around for the end-of-year tax planning. She must have triggered a fraud alert by mistake. I'll clear it up as soon as we land." "I understand, Mr. Sterling," Vanessa said, her eyes flicking momentarily to the tablet in her hand. "However, company policy requires us to secure payment for add-ons immediately. Do you have a debit card? Or perhaps cash?" "Cash." Ronald patted his pockets instinctively. He usually carried a heavy money clip, a power move he enjoyed displaying. But in the rush to leave the house, and with the plan to withdraw foreign currency in the lounge in Dubai to avoid Sarah seeing the withdrawal location on their joint statement, he had emptied it. He had exactly $40 and some loose change. I don't have cash on me," Ronald admitted, his voice dropping to a whisper. The humiliation was a physical weight in his stomach. He was Ronald Sterling. He made 7 figures a year. He was flying first class, and he couldn't pay a $200 upgrade fee. "I see," Vanessa said. The judgment was subtle, but it was there. "I will have to cancel the spa reservation for Miss Miller." Then, "Fine. Just cancel it. Don't mention it to her." Vanessa nodded and glided away. Ronald exhaled, rubbing his temples. He needed information. He needed to assess the damage. He pulled out his laptop. The onboard Wi-Fi was expensive, but he had his corporate login. He connected, the little loading circle spinning mockingly slow. Connected. He navigated immediately to his primary banking portal. The screen loaded. He entered his username and password. Incorrect password. He frowned. He hadn't changed it in 6 months. He typed it again, slower, watching every keystroke. Incorrect password. Attempts remaining, 1. Sarah, he hissed under his breath. She had been busy. He clicked Forgot Password. To reset your password, a verification code has been sent to the mobile number ending in 88. Ronald stared at the screen, his blood running cold. His number ended in 55. Sarah's number ended in 88. She had changed the two-factor authentication. She had locked him out of his own money. He tried his email. Same result. Recovery email changed to S.Sterling@. He sat back, the realization washing over him like a tidal wave. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a surgical strike. She hadn't just reacted emotionally. She had planned this for weeks, maybe months. She had waited until he was at 30,000 feet, suspended in the air, unreachable and helpless, to flip the switch. Ronald? Chloe pepped her head over the partition. She was wearing a silk sleep mask pushed up onto her forehead, looking groggy and adorable. Why did the lady take my menu away? I wanted to order the caviar sliders for a snack later. Ronald looked at her, really looked at her. For the last 6 months, Chloe had been an escape. She was fun, uncomplicated, and worshipped the ground he walked on. But now, seeing her pout over caviar sliders while his entire existence was incinerating, she didn't look like a prize. She looked like a liability. There was a mix-up with the catering, Ronald lied, his voice tight. They ran out. Seriously? First class and they run out? That is so tacking. She flopped back into her seat, pulling the duvet up. Wake me up when we get to Dubai. I want to hit the Chanel boutique before the connection. Ronald stared at the partition, separating them. The Chanel boutique. He had promised her a handbag as a Christmas gift, a $5,000 bag. He looked at the decline notification on his phone screen. He couldn't even buy her a bottle of water, let alone a Chanel bag. He turned back to the documents in his lap, reading the fine print of the real estate sale agreement. He needed to find a loophole. Clause 14b, immediate transfer of occupancy. He read it twice. The closing date was yesterday. The buyers, an LLC that sounded vaguely familiar, had taken immediate possession. He pictured his home. The mahogany desk in his study, his collection of vintage guitars on the wall, the safe behind the painting where he kept his passport backups, and his breath hitched. The safe. Inside that safe wasn't just cash. There was a hard drive. A hard drive containing the unredacted ledgers of the Sterling Vance merger. The ledgers that showed exactly how he had skimmed $2 million off the top to fund his consulting firm, the firm that paid for Chloe's apartment, this trip, everything. If Sarah had sold the house, she had cleared the house. If she had cleared the house, she had opened the safe. She knew the combination. It was their anniversary. He felt a wave of nausea so violent he had to grab the armrests to keep from bolting to the bathroom. It wasn't just a divorce. It wasn't just bankruptcy. If she had that drive, and if she handed it to the wrong people or the right people, he wasn't just broke, he was a felon. He looked out the window at the endless, indifferent darkness. He had 6 hours left of flight time. 6 hours to sit in the dark and wonder if the police were waiting for him in Dubai, or if that special hell was reserved for when he tried to return to the United States. He poured the flat champagne into his mouth, swallowing it like medicine. It tasted like vinegar. The descent into Dubai International Airport was usually a spectacle Ronald enjoyed. The glittering grid of the city, the Burj Khalifa piercing the clouds like a needle, the sheer audacity of a metropolis built on sand and money. It was a view that resonated with him, man conquering nature through sheer will and wealth. Today, however, the sprawl of lights looked like a circuit board for a bomb he had accidentally armed. The A380 touched down with a roar of reverse thrusters. As the plane taxied toward the terminal, the sheer size of DXB became apparent. It was a beast of glass and steel, a transit point for the entire world. Finally, Chloe stretched, her bracelets jangling. I am so stiff. I need a real coffee in that bag, Ronald. Come on. She was already up, grabbing her carry-on, oblivious to the fact that Ronald hadn't moved. He was staring at his phone. The moment the wheels touched the tarmac, he had reconnected to the cellular network. His phone vibrated. Once, twice. Then a continuous, angry buzz that lasted for a full minute. 47 text messages, 6 missed calls, 12 emails. He didn't look at Sarah's messages. He looked at the ones from Nathaniel, the managing partner at his firm. Call me. Immediately. Ronald, Compliance is in my office. Where are you? Do not talk to anyone until we speak. You are suspended effective immediately, pending the SEC audit. The blood drained from Ronald's face so completely that his vision blurred at the edges. SEC audit. Sarah hadn't just filed for divorce. She had blown the whistle. She had given them the hard drive. Ronald? Chloe was standing in the aisle, tapping her foot. People are waiting. Let's go. He stood up, his legs feeling like jelly. He grabbed his briefcase, the briefcase that now felt like it contained a bomb, and followed her out. The heat of the jet bridge was the first shock. Even with the air conditioning, the desert air had a weight to it. They walked down the long, pristine corridors, Chloe chatting excitedly about the resort in the Maldives, about the overwater villa, about the Instagram photos she was going to take. We have 3 hours, Chloe said, checking her reflection in a shop window. That's plenty of time for duty-free. I saw this limited edition perfume. Chloe, stop, Ronald said. His voice was rough. She turned, frowning. What is your problem? You've been acting weird since the 2nd hour of the flight. Are you jet-lagged already? We need to go to the gate, he said, ignoring her question. We need to check the connection. Why? We have boarding passes. Just follow me. He walked fast, leaving her to trot behind him in her high-heeled sandals. He needed to get to the Emirates desk. He needed to know if he could even leave Dubai. They reached the transfer desk for flight EK 658 to Malé. There was a line, but Ronald bypassed it, heading for the first-class counter. The agent, a young man with a crisp beard and a gold name tag, smiled. Good morning, sir. How can I help you? Ronald handed over his passport and boarding pass. His hand was shaking so badly he dropped the passport on the counter, checking in for Malé. Ronald Sterling and Chloe Miller. The agent picked up the passport, scanned it, and typed on his keyboard. He frowned. He typed again. Then he stopped typing and looked at the screen with a perplexed expression. Mr. Sterling, the agent said, his voice dropping to a discreet volume. I'm afraid there is an issue with this ticket. What issue? Ronald demanded, though he knew in his bones. This itinerary has been canceled. Canceled? Chloe shrieked, stepping up beside Ronald. What do you mean canceled? We're going to the Maldives. It's Christmas. I'm sorry, ma'am, the agent said, unfailingly polite. The ticket was refunded to the original form of payment approximately 14 hours ago. The seats have been resold. Refunded? Chloe turned to Ronald, her eyes wide with shock and rising anger. Ronald, did you cancel the flight? No, Ronald muttered. Sarah. She bought the tickets on the joint account. She canceled the second leg. She what? Chloe's voice was getting louder. People were starting to stare. You said she was fine with this. You said she was packing tax forms. Sir, the agent interjected gently, if you wish to rebook, there are seats available in economy on the evening flight. A first-class seat is available tomorrow morning. Book it, Ronald said instantly. The morning flight, first class. Certainly. That will be 18,000 dirhams, approximately $5,000. How would you like to pay? Ronald stared at the card reader. He had no cards. They were all frozen. He had no cash. He had no access to his bank accounts. He stood in the middle of one of the richest airports in the world, wearing a $5,000 suit. And he was effectively a beggar. Ronald stammered. I need to make a call. Ronald, Chloe hissed, grabbing his arm. Her nails dug into his skin. Pay the man. Put it on the black card. I can't, he whispered, the truth finally being dragged out of him. She canceled the cards, Chloe. She froze everything. I can't pay for the ticket. Chloe stared at him. The silence between them stretched, filled only by the beep of luggage carts and the murmur of travelers. The realization hit her slowly. No Maldives, no villa, no shopping. So we're stuck here? She asked, her voice trembling with rage. I have to call my office. I have to fix this. Fix this? Chloe stepped back, looking at him with pure disgust. You don't have any money? You brought me halfway around the world on Christmas, and you don't have any money? It's temporary, Ronald snapped, his control fraying. It's a divorce tactic. I'm still rich, Chloe. I just can't access it right this second. Sir, the agent said, his patience wearing thin. Please step aside so I can assist other passengers while you sort out your payment. Ronald stumbled away from the counter, pulling Chloe with him. They stood near a massive glass wall overlooking the runway. "Give me your phone," Ronald said. "What?" "My phone is blowing up with work. I need to call my lawyer, but I can't use my line in case they're tracking it." "Give me your phone." Chloe clutched her phone to her chest. "No." "Chloe, don't be childish. I need to make a call to get us out of here." "You're not getting us out of here," she said, her eyes narrowing. "I heard what you said." "Suspended." "Sec. My dad was a lawyer, Ronald. I know what that means. You're not just divorced. You're in trouble." She looked down at her phone, typing rapidly. "Who are you texting?" "My sister," Chloe said, not looking up. "She has a Miles account. She's going to book me a ticket back to New York." "Back to New York?" Ronald felt a surge of panic. "You're leaving me?" Chloe looked up, and the mask was completely gone. There was no adoration, no playfulness, just the cold calculation of a survivor. "You think I'm going to stay in a Dubai airport with a broke, suspended guy who lied to his wife and got caught?" She scoffed. "I dated you because you were fun and generous, Ronald. This isn't fun. And you definitely aren't being generous." "I left my wife for you," Ronald shouted. A few heads turned. "No," Chloe corrected him, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "You left your wife for yourself. Don't put that on me." She turned and walked away, her heels clicking rhythmically on the polished floor. She didn't look back. Ronald stood alone. He looked at his phone. He had to call Nathaniel. He had to know how bad it was. He dialed the number. "Nathaniel, it's Ronald." "Listen, there's been a misunderstanding." "Ronald?" Nathaniel's voice was icy. "I'm putting you on speaker. The general counsel is here. And Agent Miller from the FBI is also in the room. They would like to speak with you." Ronald dropped the phone. It clattered against the marble floor, the screen cracking down the middle. He looked up. 2 men in dark suits were walking toward him from the direction of the customs exit. They weren't airport security. They walked with the heavy, purposeful stride of international law enforcement. He looked at the departure board. Flight EK 201 to New York, JFK. Boarding. Flight EK 658 to Malé. Boarding. He wasn't going to either. The desert mirage had vanished. All that was left was the scorching heat and the long, long road down. The 2 men in dark suits did not run. They did not shout. They moved with the terrifying, predatory calm of glaciers. They were not airport security. Their suits were too well tailored, their earpieces too discreet. Ronald stood frozen, his cracked phone lying at his feet like a dead bird. The bustling noise of Terminal 3, the announcements in Arabic and English, the laughter of tourists, the clatter of duty-free carts seemed to be sucked out of the air, leaving him in a vacuum of silence. The man on the left reached him first. He was tall, with slate-gray eyes and a jawline that looked like it had been chiseled from granite. He didn't offer a hand to shake. He held up a leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal a badge that caught the harsh overhead lights. "Mr. Sterling," the man said. It wasn't a question. "I'm Agent Miller, FBI, attached to the consulate. This is Officer Rashid from the Dubai Police CID." Ronald's mouth was dry, tasting of sour champagne and bile. He tried to summon the corporate mask, the persona that had bullied junior analysts and charmed board members for 2 decades. I was just on the phone with my legal counsel. There's a misunderstanding regarding a compliance issue in New York. I'm handling it." "There is no misunderstanding, Mr. Sterling," Officer Rashid said. His voice was softer than Miller's, but it carried the weight of absolute authority within his jurisdiction. "We have received a red notice request from the United States regarding your detention." "Detention?" Ronald's voice cracked. "I'm in transit. I haven't entered the country. You can't detain me." Agent Miller stepped closer, invading Ronald's personal space. He smelled of stale coffee and peppermint. "Technically, you're right. You haven't entered. But your passport has been flagged as revoked by the U.S. State Department as of 2 hours ago. You are currently a stateless individual attempting to board an international flight with invalid documentation. That gives Officer Rashid plenty of reason to hold you." "Revoked?" Ronald stared at them. "That's impossible. It takes weeks to revoke a passport. Not when a federal judge deems you an imminent flight risk," Miller said, a grim smile touching his lips. And considering you bought a one-way ticket to a non-extradition-friendly country on the same day your wife handed over a hard drive containing evidence of a $50 million Ponzi scheme, the judge moved very quickly. The world tilted. 50 million. They knew the number. They knew the exact number. I didn't. Ronald started, but the protest died in his throat. Please, Mr. Sterling. Rashid gestured toward a nondescript steel door nestled between a Prada store and a currency exchange booth. We would prefer not to make a scene. Please pick up your bag. Ronald looked around. Where was Chloe? He scanned the crowd. He saw the back of a blonde head disappearing into the crowd near the gates for the New York flight. She hadn't even looked back. She was gone, taking her youth and her freedom with her, leaving him to pay the bill. He bent down, his knees popping, and picked up his briefcase, the briefcase that still held the divorce papers. He picked up his shattered phone. He walked between the two men. People walked past them, eating sandwiches, checking their watches, completely oblivious that a life was ending right in front of them. They led him through the steel door into a network of concrete corridors that ran like veins behind the glamorous skin of the airport. The air here was colder, smelling of cleaning chemicals and unwashed bodies. They walked for what felt like miles, descending deeper into the bowels of the terminal. Finally, they stopped at a holding room. It wasn't a dungeon. It was worse. It was a sterile, white room with a glass wall facing a guard station. A fishbowl. There was a metal bench bolted to the floor and a single stainless steel toilet in the corner. Shoes, belt, tie, and watch, Rashid commanded. Ronald fumbled with his belt buckle. His hands were shaking so violently he couldn't undo the clasp. Allow me, Miller said, stepping forward. He didn't help. He ripped the belt through the loops with a sharp jerk. He took the Rolex, the vintage Submariner Ronald had bought to celebrate his first million, and dropped it into a plastic bag. It hit the bottom with a dull thud. My lawyer, Ronald whispered. I need... Nathaniel, you can make a call once you're processed, Miller said. But I should warn you, Ronald. We spoke to Nathaniel. He's representing the firm now, not you. The firm is cooperating fully. They're the ones who verified the signatures on the fraudulent transfers. Ronald slumped onto the metal bench. The cold seeped through his suit trousers instantly. Get comfortable, Miller said, pausing at the door. The extradition paperwork usually takes a few days. But since your wife was kind enough to provide us with your full itinerary and the intent to flee, we might be able to expedite your return to the Southern District of New York. Sarah, Ronald breathed. She planned this. Miller looked at him, and for a second, the professional mask slipped, revealing genuine curiosity. She didn't just plan it, Sterling. She executed it perfectly. She waited until you were in the air to file the whistleblower complaint. She knew you'd try to transfer funds, which allowed us to freeze the assets in real time. She didn't just catch you. She gift-wrapped you. The heavy metal door slammed shut. The lock engaged with a sound like a gunshot. Ronald sat alone in the glass box. He looked at his reflection in the window. He didn't look like a master of the universe anymore. Without the tie, with his shirt unbuttoned and his hair messing, he looked exactly like what he was, a man who had gambled everything on a lie and lost to the person he had underestimated for 15 years. Time lost its meaning in the holding cell. There were no windows to the outside world, only the harsh, buzzing fluorescent strip light that never turned off. Ronald guessed it had been 6 hours, maybe 12, since he was locked in. He had paced the 6-foot length of the cell until his blisters developed on his heels in his Italian loafers. He had sat, he had put his head between his knees to stop the room from spinning. He replayed the last 24 hours over and over. The champagne, the text message, the envelope. I put a document in your briefcase. It was the ultimate Trojan horse. She had made him carry his own death warrant through airport security. The door buzzed and clicked open. Officer Rashid entered, carrying a tray with a bottle of water and a sandwich wrapped in plastic. He placed it on the bench. You have a visitor? Rashid said. Ronald shot up. Nathaniel, is he here? No, Rashid said. A solicitor. Local counsel arranged by the U.S. consulate to oversee your extradition rights. A woman walked in. She was young, perhaps 30, wearing a hijab and a sharp black blazer. She carried a briefcase similar to the one Ronald used to own. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice brisk and professional. My name is Layla Al-Fayed. I have been appointed to ensure your transfer to U.S. custody adheres to international law. Get me out on bail, Ronald demanded, his voice hoarse. I have money. I have connections. I can't stay here. Layla sat on the edge of the bench, opening a file. She looked at him with pitying eyes. Mr. Sterling, there is no bail. You are a foreign national with no residency, facing charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering, and you were apprehended while attempting to flee to a non-extradition jurisdiction. No judge in the UAE or the US will grant you release. I wasn't fleeing, Ronald lied, the desperation making him sound pathetic. I was on vacation. It was Christmas. The FBI has your text messages, Mr. Sterling, Layla said calmly, pulling a sheet of paper from her file. Specifically, a text sent to Miss Chloe Miller 3 days ago. Once we get to Malé, I'm moving the accounts. Sarah won't see a dime. We can stay there for 6 months until the heat dies down. Ronald closed his eyes. He remembered sending that. He had been drunk on power and Pinot Noir. It gets worse, Layla continued, turning a page. I've been in contact with the district attorney's office in New York. They have shared the scope of the evidence provided by your wife. What evidence? Apparently, Mrs. Sterling is quite organized. Layla adjusted her glasses. She didn't just find the tax forms. For the last year, she has been cross-referencing your business trips with credit card charges. She hired a forensic accountant, a man named David Thorne, I believe 6 months ago. Ronald's stomach dropped. David Thorne. He knew that name. Thorne was a shark, the best forensic accountant in Connecticut. They found the shell companies in the Caymans. Layla recited the list like a eulogy. Aurora Holdings, Blue Sky Ventures, the Gemini Trust, all of them. And they found the source of the funds. She looked up at him. You were draining the pension fund, Mr. Sterling? The employee pension fund? Ronald looked away. It was temporary. I was going to put it back after the Tokyo deal closed. That is what they all say, Layla said softly. But here is the twist that will likely ensure you receive the maximum sentence. She pulled out a photocopy of a document. It was the real estate purchase and sale agreement he had seen on the plane. You were worried about the house sale? She asked. She sold my house, Ronald muttered. She sold it out from under me. She did, Layla nodded. But she didn't keep the money. Do you know where the proceeds from the sale of 42 Oakwood Lane went? Ronald shook his head. The closing documents show that Sarah Sterling directed the entire net proceeds, $4.2 million, directly into an escrow account controlled by the court, designated for the reimbursement of the pension fund victims. Ronald stared at her, his mouth falling open. She gave it back? He whispered. She gave it back before anyone even knew it was missing, Layla corrected. By doing so, she positioned herself not as your accomplice, but as the hero. She saved the company from total collapse. The press in New York is already running the story. The wife who walked away to save the workers. She is untouchable, Mr. Sterling. And you are the villain who tried to run away with a 24-year-old while your wife sold her dream home to pay your debts. Ronald slumped back against the cold concrete wall. He finally understood. It wasn't just about catching him. It was about destroying his narrative. If she had just divorced him, he could have spun it. She was crazy, she was jealous, she wanted his money. But she had given the money away. She had sacrificed the mansion to save the employees. She had seized the moral high ground so firmly that he would never, ever be able to climb up there. She left me nothing, Ronald whispered. Not even my reputation. She left you exactly what you earned, Layla said, closing her file. She stood up. The marshals will arrive tomorrow morning to escort you to the flight. It will be a commercial flight, but you will be in the back row, restrained. I suggest you eat your sandwich. It will be a long journey home. Layla knocked on the glass, signaling the guard. Wait, Ronald said. Did she say anything? Did she send a message? Layla paused at the door. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small, white envelope. It was identical to the one in his briefcase. She asked that this be given to you once you were in custody. She was very specific about the timing. Layla slid the envelope through the slot in the door and walked away. Ronald stared at it. His hands trembled as he picked it up. He tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture taken yesterday, It showed Sarah sitting in front of a fireplace in a modest cabin, probably her sister's place in Vermont. She was wearing a cozy sweater, holding a mug of cocoa. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. She was smiling. Not a vindictive smile, not a triumphant smile, just a smile of pure, unadulterated peace. On the back of the photo, she had written 3 words. "The deal is closed." Ronald dropped the photo on the floor. He looked at the sandwich, then at the toilet, then at the gray walls. The silence of the cell was absolute. The noise of his life, the deals, the lies, the affairs, the rush was gone. All that was left was the karma he had accrued, compound interest and all, coming due all at once. He sat on the floor, pulled his knees to his chest, and for the first time in 20 years, Ronald Sterling began to weep. The flight back to New York was nothing like the flight out. There was no champagne, no heated towels, and certainly no lay-flat bed. Ronald sat in row 58E, the middle seat in the very last row of economy, wedged between 2 U.S. Marshals who smelled of stale tobacco and indifference. His hands were cuffed in his lap, covered by a jacket to avoid alarming the other passengers. But the metallic bite of the steel was a constant reminder of his new reality. When the beverage cart came around, the flight attendant, a different one this time, didn't offer him Dom Perignon. She barely looked at him as she handed him a plastic cup of lukewarm water. Ronald closed his eyes, trying to block out the crying baby in the row ahead. But all he could see was the ghost of the life he had left behind just 48 hours ago. He thought of the sunset villa in the Maldives, the turquoise water he would never touch. He thought of the sunset of his career, which was now a blackened crater. Upon landing at JFK, there was no limo waiting. The marshals escorted him off the plane first, not for VIP treatment, but to avoid the press that had gathered at the gate. But they couldn't avoid the tarmac transfer. As he was led down the stairs to the waiting black van, Ronald saw them. A horde of photographers pressed against the chain-link fence of the secure area. The flashes popped like lightning in the gray New York drizzle. "Ronald, did you know she sold the house?" "Mr. Sterling, do you have a comment for the pensioners?" "Look this way, scumbag." He lowered his head. He had always craved fame. He had wanted to be on the cover of Forbes. Now, he was destined for the front page of the Post, under a headline that would likely read, "The Grinch Who Stole Pensions." The legal proceedings moved with the speed of a guillotine. There was no drawn-out battle. Sarah's evidence was bulletproof. The forensic trail she had provided laid out every dollar stolen, every wire transfer authorized, every fake invoice forged. Because Sarah had voluntarily liquidated their assets to pay back the victims before the indictment even dropped, the public narrative was set in stone. Sarah was the saint, Ronald was the sinner. The judge, a stern woman who seemed to take personal offense at Ronald's arrogance, showed no leniency. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said at the sentencing hearing 3 months later, "you betrayed your wife, you betrayed your employees, and you betrayed the public trust. You treated people like disposable assets. It is only fitting that society now treats you as a liability." Sentence: 15 years in federal prison. Restitution: $12 million. A sum he would never be able to pay, ensuring he would die in debt. As the gavel banged down, Ronald turned to look at the gallery. He hoped, perhaps irrationally, to see Sarah. He wanted to scream at her, or maybe beg her. But Sarah wasn't there. In the back row, however, was a familiar face. Chloe. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and typing on her phone. She looked up as the bailiffs grabbed Ronald's arms. She didn't look sad. She looked bored. She snapped a quick photo of him in his orange jumpsuit, presumably for her social media story, a throwback to the worst date of her life, and then walked out before he was even led through the side door. 6 months later, Sarah Sterling stood in the kitchen of a small, cozy cottage in the Hudson Valley. It wasn't a mansion. It didn't have a wine cellar or a heated driveway, but it was hers. Bought with the small inheritance she had from her grandmother, money Ronald had never been able to touch. She wiped flour from her hands. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. She had opened a small bakery in the village, a dream she had buried years ago because Ronald said it was beneath a Sterling. The morning news was playing softly on the small TV in the corner. And in financial news, the Sterling Pension Fund has fully recovered, thanks to the early intervention of whistleblower Sarah Sterling. In related news, Former executive Ronald Sterling was transferred today to the maximum security facility at Fort Dix to begin his 15-year sentence. Sarah stopped kneading the dough. She looked at the screen. They showed a mugshot of Ronald. He looked 10 years older. His hair was thinning, his eyes hollow. She didn't feel happy. She didn't feel sad. She felt the profound, quiet relief of a heavy weight finally being set down. She walked over to the TV and turned it off. Outside, the snow was beginning to fall, dusting the pine trees in white. It was beautiful. She picked up her mug of tea, walked to the window, and watched the flakes drift down. It was going to be a white Christmas. And for the first time in 15 years, she didn't have to wonder where her husband was, or who he was texting, or what lie he was telling. She knew exactly where he was, and she knew exactly who she was. Sarah took a sip of tea, the warmth spreading through her chest. She smiled, turned back to her dough, and started to bake. And that is the story of Ronald Sterling, a man who thought the grass was greener on the other side, only to find out his wife was the one watering the lawn all along. It's a brutal reminder that in the game of life, integrity is the only currency that doesn't devalue. Ronald tried to trade a loyal partner for a temporary thrill, and he paid the ultimate price: his freedom, his fortune, and his name. Sarah, on the other hand, proved that the best revenge isn't screaming or fight, it's taking back your power, fixing the mess, and walking away with your head held high. As the old saying goes, be careful who you betray. You never know who holds the keys to your safety. Wow, what a ride. If that story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. And I have to ask you, do you think Sarah went too far by handing him over to the FBI, or did Ronald get exactly what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy tale coming up next week about a lottery winner who hid his ticket from his family, and it does not end well. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.